So we are continuing in today's Mishna Yomi. We find ourselves today beginning Perek Ches, the 8th chapter of Maseches Berachos. So today we'll be doing Perek Ches, Mishnayos Aleph and Beis, chapter 8, the first two Mishnayos. Eile Dvarim Shebein Beis Shammai uBeis Hillel Besuda. So Mishnah Aleph says as follows. The following is a listing of things that represent halachic differences of opinion between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about how one is to conduct themselves in a Su'udah. Now the truth is, they're really focusing over here specifically by Kiddush. So for example, Beis Shammai omrim, mevarich al hayom v'achar kach mevarich al hayayin. So Beis Shammai says that halacha l'maisa, the first thing you should do is to make the bracha of Kiddush. So remember again, let's take Friday night because that's the better example. So we have two brachas in Friday night. You have the bracha of Mekadesh HaShabbos, which is the bracha of Kiddush, and we have Borei Pri Hagafen. So Beis Shammai says that the proper order is to first go and make Mekadesh HaShabbos, and afterwards Borei Pri Hagafen. Now, their idea, the logic behind their position is, the Bartanura says, Shetchila Kadesh Hayom V'Akach Ba'yayin. Because the truth is, the Kiddush of Shabbos comes before Borei Pri Hagafen. Namely that what? Shabbos begins even before you recite Kiddush. So because it's already, so to speak, Shabbos, therefore it makes more sense to recite the bracha of Mekadesh HaShabbos and then Borei Pri Hagafen. Conversely, Beis Hillel omer mevarich al hayayin v'achar mevarich al hayom. Beis Hillel disagrees, and Beis Hillel says no, it is better to first make Borei Pri Hagafen and then afterwards Mekadesh HaShabbos. Now, Beis Hillel's idea, why would he say mevarich al hayayin? Ultimately, again, he says, the lashon of the Bartanura is shehayayin gorem lekiddush hayom. Remember, Kiddush is a mitzvah that is anchored on a cup of wine. Or anchored in a cup of wine. So therefore, so to speak, it's the wine that causes the Kiddush to occur. So an interesting machlokes. So Beis Shammai is saying, since it's already Shabbos, before you even make Kiddush, say Mekadesh HaShabbos and then Hagafen. Beis Hillel, on the other hand, saying, no, it's the wine itself that creates the concept of Kiddush, and therefore say Hagafen and then Mekadesh HaShabbos. Of course, we know we paskin like Beis Hillel, and therefore, again, like looking at Friday night, for example, we say the opening paragraph of Vayichulu, the bracha Borei Pri Hagafen, and then ultimately the bracha of what we call Kiddush. The actual Kiddush is that last bracha of Mekadesh HaShabbos. Beautiful. We now come to Mishnah Beis. So Mishnah Beis says as follows: Beis Shammai omrim, notlin liyadayim v'achkach mozgin hasakos. So Beis Shammai says as follows, that in reality what you should do is first wash your hands. Now, without wading too far into the halachos concerning ritual impurity, or ritual purity and impurity, there's a concept that, well, let's first read the Mishnah. First, you wash your hands, and then you pour the cup. So I'll quote to you here from the Bartanura. The Bartanura says as follows. He says, because what's the concern? If you have a person first pour a cup of wine before having washed their hands. Now, to be clear, this has nothing to do with washing for bread. So even though we were speaking about before by Kiddush, don't think that this Mishnah therefore is like the next step in here. We're talking about Hamotzi. This is just a regular case, a regular situation. So Bartanura says as follows: if you have a person go ahead and pour the cup of wine before washing their hands, Kodem netila toras sheni l'tuma yeshlam. So just to give you an idea over here, so hands have a general level of rabbinic tuma. We call them shniyim l'tuma. It's a lower tiered level of tuma. Beis Shammai says like this: here's the concern. If I don't wash my hands, I haven't washed my hands, and we talk about ritual washing, of course. I haven't washed my hands, and now I'm pouring my cup of wine. If I pour my cup of wine and the wine comes in contact with my hands, that wine is able to contract a lower level of tumah, ritual impurity, from my hands. What could then end up happening is the wine can convey that level of ritual impurity, or some level of ritual impurity, I should say, back to the cup. And therefore, again, Beis Shammai says that halacha l'maisa, first wash your hands, and then go ahead and pour the wine. This way, again, no concern of communicating ritual impurity to the wine, which could then potentially transmit the ritual impurity to the back of the cup. When I say back of the cup, meaning the area where the actual wine is touching the cup, on the outside of the cup. Beis Hillel says Mosgin asakos va'achak not linadayim. Beisil, on the other hand, says, no, it's not a problem. You could first go ahead and pour the cup of wine and only go ahead and wash your hands afterwards. Now, it's interesting to note, in the Beir, one of the commentaries of the Mishnah, quotes you over here, says, Beisil solvrim, shemuter lishtos besuda miklisha chorav tmeim, mibnei shiladaitam ein zematzei sheinasnu tipos mitohakos lachoreakos. So ultimately, again, Beisil essentially says, Beisil is not arguing on the halacha person. In other words, the mechanics are the mechanics. Unwashed hands are ritually impure on a lower level of tumah. Those hands, if they come in contact with liquid, can convey tumah to the liquid. That liquid, in turn, can convey tumah, ritual impurity, to the part of the utensil that it touches. What Beis Hillel is just arguing on over here is Beis Hillel says a person could pour a cup of wine without any droplets of wine coming on the outside. In other words, the whole thing is a concern that when you're pouring wine, there's going to be wine that pours out, that spills out or splashes out from the inside of the cup to the outside of the cup, comes in contact with your hands, then comes back in contact with the utensil. Beis Hillel says people know how to pour a glass of wine, so therefore we're not, essentially, so Beis Hillel is agreeing in essence with the halacha that Beis Shammai is espousing. They're just saying that at the end of the day, it's not common. It's not a common enough scenario to go ahead and legislate for. Now, this is actually very important because this kind of gets to the essence also of, and by the way, we paskin like Beis Hillel, that halacha l'maisa, one could go ahead and pour wine. Well, again, today we're not really careful with this ritual impurity at all. But again, technically, when they were, we paskin like Beis Hillel. I'll just point out there's a very important halachic piece as well here, which is that Beis Hillel is also teaching us a very important principle, which is that in general, when the rabbis legislate laws, they only legislate in what we'll call common or foreseeable situations. But what Beis Hillel is saying is in uncommon or just uncommon situations or just situations that don't commonly occur, not regular occurrences, the rabbis don't legislate in those type of scenarios. Therefore, again, Beis Hillel says you could pour a cup of wine without it splashing on the outside. Therefore, no concern of conveyance of ritual impurity, and therefore one could first pour the cup of wine even before they have washed their hands. Rambam paskins like Beis Hillel. We will stop over here and in Meretz Hashem continue in Mishnayos Gimel and Dalid in Meretz Hashem tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.